For a freedom-minded maverick, thinking outside of the box, socialist Hungary was a minefield. Sure enough, my wife and I got in trouble, suffered persecution, and fled the country. But there was a second reason why I wanted to restart my life somewhere else. Europe and I weren't a good fit. Keeping a tradition alive is more than just mindlessly repeating what our parents, grandparents, great everybody did. There's something charming about when the young people discover that their tradition is actually a lot of fun. It is important to be connected with the past, and handing down cultural heritage to a new generation is supposed to be meaningful and make the kids' life easier. There are wonderful examples of local European traditions that are so appealing, so invigorating that they became tourist attractions. However, if conforming to a tradition is a rigid social expectation, the young people will see it as a straitjacket and move away. Everywhere in the world, people live in various forms of dominance hierarchies. In Europe, we can still see the remnants of the privileged classes in power positions. This goes back to the good old feudal system, and it's particularly noticeable in academia and in the arts. The power cascades from the top. Dominant senior figures surround themselves with a circle of loyal vassals whose status comes from being connected to a great protector. I'm a protege of so-and-so, and I'm connected to the source of power and wisdom. Well, if you are part of the in crowd, you are safe. If your connection to this hierarchy is severed, you're a serf, a nobody. Now, by the way, the communists promised to start a fresh and dynamic classless society, but instead, they ran the same show. We may complain that the traditional European hierarchical system gets rigid and ushers in orthodoxy. This croissant is perfect. Its recipe cannot be further improved. Accept and love the orthodoxy in it. Everything that Europe is famous for is a product of a slow evolution and refinement. Now, the flip side of orthodoxy is, for example, the art scene in 19th century France. The establishment's official salons rewarded this kind of art. And the revolutionary paintings of the rejected artists like Monet and Renoir were like this. It is a never-ending story in Europe. Orthodoxy stands in the way of progress, and innovators bump into walls. If you go to the Val Joux in Switzerland, you will find small watch companies where master watchmakers produce insanely expensive, high-quality, handmade watches that are completely useless. Perfection cannot be perfected, so the proud master watchmaker just repeats himself, producing variations on a theme. What will he teach the junior watchmaker? Now, if you are a Ferrari chief designer in Maranello, your incredible heritage is intoxicating and it will get to your head. You will think that the world should gather around your feet and learn from you. It is true that Europe is the cradle of civilization, but things change. Looking down on other cultures doesn't help. And I have seen, unfortunately, many examples of pompous attitudes turning into arrogance and even Euro-Chauvinism. When I started my professional career, I was well prepared to make a name for myself, but I had to navigate this complex European playing field. I wanted to live up to the ideal of the Renaissance man. I started to integrate myself into the hierarchy of the intellectual elite, and in exchange for status, I accepted that I would have a scripted life. I was also guilty of participating in the romantic cult of the great man. As a teacher of history of art, all my role models were larger-than-life artists. Was I any good? Well, relatively speaking, yes, I had some strengths. I thought I was a uniquely trained and uniquely positioned young genius destined to fill a niche because I couldn't see any competitors around me. Now, this distortion in my perception, basically an inaccurate assessment of my situation, was my bubble. My bubble had to pop, and it did. First, a professional failure. Naively, I thought that my students would fall in love with the beauty of my subject. I just present my fantastic material and the magic will happen. Well, I didn't foresee the reality of undermotivated and obnoxious high school kids toying with me for the fun of it or because they could. As an inexperienced young teacher, I was an easy target. I struggled alone and continued to sink. I thought I was more protected. I thought wrong. Non-conforming individuals making noises on their own became irritants and were quickly rejected. I became an outsider without any chance to redeem myself and rise again. And the communists? Oh, they just did their thing and crushed me. I faced decades of living under the radar and surviving by doing manual labor. So I ended up here in Canada. Was I able to leave all those bad European things behind me? Yes, thank God I was. As I processed my trauma and redefined myself, it was relatively easy to become a reasonably assimilated Canadian. I didn't feel pressured to conform with arbitrary expectations. People here are more likely to accept that somebody's a bit different and then they leave you alone. However, when my wife joined a local choir, it turned out that the members were mostly from the old guard British elite. These thoroughly ossified relics from the past considered my wife an outsider, a newcomer, an immigrant, a wannabe. She got fed up with their attitude and walked away. My son-in-law is a successful businessman, not because he's from a privileged family, not because he went to an Ivy League school, but because he's well worth the money they're paying him. His upward mobility doesn't depend on culturally embedding himself into a neo-feudal system. He is rewarded for functioning well in a capitalist model of producing wealth. And he's motivated because he tosses energy down the food chain. I often fantasize about the idyllic life in alpine villages. For those who were born there, let's say in the Ködnitz Valley, and choose to embrace the kind of life it offers, it's paradise. As an outsider yearning to belong, I'm enamored by all the good things. Guys born in the Ködnitz Valley, well, they also see the problems. Salivating over a Porsche is one thing, but having one in the garage is a pain in the butt. It's a completely useless status symbol, a vanity item. My humble little Honda is more like me. I'm surrounded by ordinary looking small town Canadian folks. None of the people around me are stylish show offs like some over there. It is much better for me to be a Canadian with a European flavor than living there as a North American shunned by Euro-Chauvinists. This is my safety. This is my safe home base. I'm glad I don't live there, but I love to visit and enjoy those wonderful European things and reconnect with the good people. They are very happy to find a Canadian friend who understands them.